take wheels for granted these days, but they're obviously a huge part of our lives. We see them all the time on things like motorcycles, cars, bicycles, and rollerblades. One of the basic functions of wheels is to reduce friction and make it easier to move a load from place to place, like on dollies to move heavy things like refrigerators. Now you may be thinking that wheels work the same way on cars, right? I mean, can you imagine my car with no wheels? Think of the effort it would take to drag it around. I certainly couldn't do it, even with my little car. Put my vehicle on wheels, and the force of friction is greatly reduced. But that's only half the story. That concept only helps us if we have to push our cars around. For a wheel to be a simple machine, it needs another part, an axle. It's round like the wheel, but smaller. The wheel is locked to the axle, and they turn around the same point. Together, they make a simple machine, the wheel and axle. The real power of the wheel and axle in something like a car happens when the effort force is applied to the axle, the smaller part of the wheel and axle team. The axle turns a small distance, but the outside of the wheel that makes contact with the ground turns a much greater distance. That's the key to how wheels make work easier for us in cars, bikes, motorcycles, trains. The effort force is applied to the smaller axle and is converted into greater speed and distance on the much larger wheel. Attach a high-powered, high-energy motor to the axle on something like a motorcycle, and you can really ride. Sometimes wheels and axles are obvious. We've just seen them. But sometimes you have to look a little harder to find the wheel and axle idea in action. And once you find them, you realize that they're everywhere. The wheel and axle is really a form of lever. It turns around a fixed point, like a fulcrum. The difference is that a wheel and axle turns all the way around the fixed point. Take a plain old wrench, for example. A wrench is both a lever and a wheel and axle. If you tried to tighten a bolt by hand, you wouldn't get very far. But use a wrench and it's easy. That's because the wrench allows you to apply the effort force over a greater distance, the wrench handle. That's the wheel. The force is multiplied at the center of the wheel on the bolt. That's the axle. Anytime a larger circle and a smaller circle are turning around the same point, that's a wheel and axle in action. Take something as simple as a doorknob. The knob is the wheel, and the post that goes through the door is the axle. When you turn the knob, the force is multiplied at the post, and the lock turns easily. It seems simple, but try turning the post without the knob attached. So we've seen 3 different ways wheels can make work easier. First, they can reduce friction, allowing us to move things that would normally be too heavy to slide. Second, we saw that a wheel and axle can be used to multiply distance and force. When effort force is applied to the axle, like in a car, the larger wheel turns and the distance is multiplied, moving the car along. And third, when effort force is applied to the wheel, like with a wrench, the force is multiplied at the axle.